You're listening to My Inner Teacher with Peter Starius and Crystal Ariel. The answers you seek are within you.
Ian, one of the inspirations in my yoga path has been you, and you know this because I ever since we met in Bali, I have this deep respect for the journey you've been on, and we want to hear about that journey. I will start there, but what I even said in the dedication in my book is you're my guru of humor. You know,
Yeah.
you bring lightheartedness to yoga like no one I've ever met, and I guess I'm going to ask you this question and put you on the spot. Are you naturally funny?
I don't like that the term dad jokes has come into popularity in the last 10 years because now that I have a son, I get labeled like dad jokes a lot. I'm like, these just used to be jokes. So if you asked me that question before the term dad jokes was a thing, I would have said yes. And if dad jokes are your thing, then yeah, I'm funny.
Oh, can you give us a dad joke?
Yeah. For example, I have my clown chakra open. Yeah.
Nice, nice.
I do. I don't know. I think that I've never been to Ireland, but my ancestors are Irish, and I think that I don't know, just humor is a big way over there to deal with a lot of the problems in life as much as meditation or any of the yogic skills.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it does make a good mix.
Yeah, in my book, that I had this chapter on the sensory body, the five senses, the physical senses, and
Oh
then
yeah.
these kind of non-physical senses, the sixth sense, which is accepted now as kind of a thing, which is intuition, our sixth sense. We have this intuitive sense, and it's a natural part of the human species to be intuitive, and the
Mhm.
research supports that we have some facility in our minds that allows us this intuitive input. And in the book, because of my understanding of humor, I added, and now there's this seventh sense. And I think I'm the first person on the planet to attribute the seventh sense to the sense of humor. And
Yes.
it's perfect. And the research on humor is that that energy of humor is turning out to be quite the healer. And I think it supports our immune system, our circulatory system. It's a mental reset when we're too heady, and it kind of moves the energy from the head into our hearts and into our guts. It helps digestion. I mean, it's like a thing. And
Well, actually, you're making me recall an article I wrote literally probably 25 years ago, and I don't even think I ever posted it. Just maybe I just even wrote it in a journal. I can't remember, but it was like called the spirituality of humor. Yoga 101 is if you're stuck in your ego, you're gonna suffer. I think everybody knows that lesson, but if you're really finding humor in something, by nature, you can't look at it from an ego perspective. You have to reduce your ego to laugh at yourself in,
Yeah.
in any particular situation. So inherently, it's actually good yoga, and it's very healing in that sense, what you're talking about.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but you know who JP Sears is?
Yes.
Well, I'm trying to. Do you know him personally? Have you?
I don't know him personally. Yeah, I
Yeah,
can't.
yeah.
I can't. I don't have him on my Rolodex. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I did. I met him a while back in Austin, Texas, but I didn't get his cell phone number. But I want him on the show, So eventually, I'm going to find the contact that gives me access to him. But he wrote that book for Sounds True called what is it? Something about spiritual, the 12 and a half step method for I think it's superior spirituality or something like that, like ultimate spirituality. And he's just kind of making fun of the fact that we take ourselves too seriously in yoga.
We
And
do.
and so he even relates it to the fact that the Buddha kind of taught non-attachment. And
Mhm.
when you're serious in your yoga practice, you're attached to a certain outcome. And
Yeah.
the best thing you can introduce into a serious yoga class is humor because it just puts that channel, it opens that channel of non-attachment to some mental concept that is, important. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And actually, I mean, God, all these buzzwords like I told you dad jokes, but also inner child work has become really popular. But I've been thinking about that for a long time. And one of my core philosophies is that kids are actually by nature pretty happy.
Right.
And you know, they have this humor naturally. Everything's not everything, but a lot of things are funny. And then as we age, it kind of gets neutered out of us, and we only see the serious things as you were mentioning. And it has to come back. Otherwise, I don't know. I think you will suffer.
Yeah,
I think
for
that's why
sure.
people start smoking weed, at least at first. Because, like, when you first smoke weed, you're just laughing the whole time.
Yeah, and it's actually and even yeah, and drinking all this stuff. I always said that it's only gives you the permission to laugh, right? It's actually really funny because many years ago, it's kind of a long story, but in 2013, I'm going to say, I was actually talking to this point, and we were in Whistler, British Columbia, at a Wanderlust, and there's 800 people in this yoga class, the big ones, and I was just saying like we're doing a meditation where I said, take all your intentions and sprinkle it like this. I was like, and roll it up, and I'm like, just breathe all your good intentions in and exhale them out like this, and everyone was laughing hysterically, right? And the dialogue before that was actually saying, like, there was a little lead up. I just jumped right into it, but there's a little lead up conversation saying, "Hey, we're here in Whistler, where there's huge mountains and there's such cool people around. We're doing yoga and there's sunshine and there's pine trees and it's beautiful. You actually don't need drugs." Actually, I seen the kind of context is I saw a Bob Marley documentary the night before. I'm like, and so I did this meditation to show people that you didn't need drugs because everyone was laughing hysterically. Like Krista was saying, like people just needed the permission. It was a really good lesson to understand that it's actually not even the drugs or the alcohol. It's just the permission of like, hey, I'm stoned now, anything goes,
Yeah.
right? And just to have the leash off us is a super important point. It turned out to be a huge issue, and I ended up on the cover of Reader's Digest because they were like, tell us about the intention joint. I forgot about this. Enough time had passed, but yeah, it was kind of it became a bit of a scandal, and it's funny actually because there was such a thing as the yoga police, and the big debate that came up on social media was, is that yogic or not? And even my friends who are musicians, not yoga at all, right? I showed up at their concert in LA, and they're like, "Hey, how's the intention joint?" I'm like, "You don't do yoga. How do you know about this?" He said, "Oh, Facebook." Like it was like this.
Wow.
There's a picture that Wanderlust had shared and had all these 800 people doing this, and it also showed me a lot about media, by the way, that you can take any picture and give a label to it in the wrong context. And I was just like, "Yeah, that guy's an idiot." I'm like, "Oh, that's me." Right? It shows you a little bit about like take one picture out of context, put a commentary on it, and people just believe it. So there's another thing too of like you really have to watch how media manipulates us, which I guess is a different conversation.
For sure. For sure. I think it's also curious to me how uh, silliness silliness is such a powerful energy to inhabit. And it is this, it's like the trickster in Hawaii. In Hawaiian legends, there's this figure, and I think it's Maui, who's
Yeah.
the trickster.
hmm
And this Heart Math Institute in Santa, did you ever get there when you were living in Santa Cruz?
I never did, but I'm super inspired by Heart Math. Oh my God. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
they're in they're not quite in Santa Cruz. They're
Yeah,
in
Boulder Creek, I
Boulder
think.
Creek. Yeah.
Yeah. So they've done all this research and how this energy, that the myth of the trickster is really about breaking the dominance of the mind and kind of spreading our intelligence between the mind, the heart, and the gut. And they
Yeah.
have all those monitors that they use to kind of give you exercises to change the brainwave state through meditation, visualization, yoga, etc. I
Yeah.
find that whole area of thought fascinating. And
Me too.
I've been doing it without the equipment, like I love to laugh. I love to have fun. And being the dad of a 17-year-old teenager, female teenager, I mean, it doesn't matter. My humor is definitely not appreciated at the house.
Do you have dad jokes
Well,
also?
what's
Yeah,
that,
but
Crystal?
I don't even like Ian. I don't label them dad jokes. They're just spontaneous things that come out of my mouth that I crack up on it, and my wife and daughter make fun of me because, do you know you're the only one laughing? And I said, you're lost because I'm generating all these chemicals in my body and you guys are just annoyed.
That's where you need all the heart math monitor. And look at this, I'm so coherent.
Exactly.
Yeah. Joke's on you.
The joke is on you. Crystal, are you funny?
I'm funny naturally. When I try to be funny, it falls very flat.
Yeah. Nah, that's also, so in my book, I also talked about my book, Gravity and Grace. Ian wrote this incredible preface for my book, and I can't thank you enough for that because you're one of the few people that I sent the copy of my book to that read it cover to cover, you know?
Oh, I devoured it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like,
thank you.
in it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm halfway through your book, and I've got lots of questions for your book, Yoga Optimized, which
Amazing.
is an amazing piece of work, Ian. So congratulations on that.
Nice.
Yeah,
It's a big book. Wow.
Yeah, it's huge.
It is a big book.
Yeah.
Anyway,
353 pages.
yeah. So let's start talking about your story a little bit.
Sure.
I mean, I want to start with the beginning of Eoin Finn, and we can start with some of your teachers. Did you have a teacher that you met that inspired you to do yoga, or was moving into yoga kind of something and then you found the teachers?
I mean, if I went way back and kind of at a 30,000-foot view, I would say, okay, I'm not a teacher, but an influence is Joseph Campbell, right? So Joseph Campbell was a huge influence on me. And, you know, we could talk a lot about that, but just to give you the short story is that when I was going into university in 1987, right before that, there was a PBS special that you probably know, The Power of Myth, that came out. And basically, I'd spent a lot of time in nature growing up, and I just loved the me I was when I was in nature. And what Joseph Campbell was saying is that the Native American idea, First Nations idea of spirituality was you don't have to go to a temple or a mosque. Everywhere in the world is sacred if you allow yourself to feel it. And then he switched from that, being somebody who could weave all these different mythologies together and or philosophies. He said, look, First Nations people had this idea that you just have to be in nature, but the yogis had this systematic way of having this mystical experience anywhere. And I was deciding what to study at university. I'm like, I want to study philosophy. And so I got into Eastern philosophy, and I would say my first real in-person influence was a man named Ravi Ravindra, who still teaches, I think. Last time I saw him teach was in Ojai. And he was just an incredible influence on me. So one thing I can tell you is a lot of people now in modern yoga era go from yoga asana, meditation, and then to philosophy. For me, it actually worked the opposite. I went philosophy, meditation, and then yoga asana. But if I went way back to the roots, and that is actually one of the things I really enjoyed about the book is the first part of it is a memoir about a little bit how I got my experience with yoga, but he's definitely the one who got me asking the big questions. Then as far as the asana practice goes, I had a friend actually who showed me how to do yoga on the beach in Ontario, Canada in the summer. And I just was like, I have to stick with this. And as the years progressed, I moved to Maui, Hawaii. And, you know, there's a lot of great yogis in Hawaii. The Ashtanga scene was huge. One of my teachers, Nadia, is over there. But yeah, I worked with Nancy Gilgoff, teachers like that as well. And yeah, I mean, the story in the book is I got injured doing Ashtanga yoga, and then I don't know. I keep telling you about the other teachers, or that's the early days. I did a lot of the whole way through the 90s was Ashtanga, some Iyengar, Ashtanga, Iyengar, basically. I think like most people, you remember back then it was basically, now you have all these menus of which type of yoga do I want to do, but we just had those two really. And I'd say the third major one that was in my sphere was Kundalini, but I never did it. But yeah.
Fantastic.
Hey, quick note. Peter's Inner Teacher Academy is launching soon. If this is resonating with you, head over to innerteacheracademy.com and grab a spot on the wait list. These trainings are intimate and space is limited. So if you want to be first in line, tap the link in the description below and sign up.
You can also see details about my 2025 retreats at some incredible locations around the world, like Iceland, Austria, California, and New Zealand. Attendance at these trainings will count towards in-person hours for the Inner Teacher Academy. And now let's get back to the magic.
Do you identify strongly with a teacher that um, carried you beyond like a we call it like a quantum leap into.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And unfortunately, she's not really famous. In fact, I don't think she teaches yoga anymore. She just gardens. She does probably 3 or 4 hours of her own asana practice anymore, but she's just mellow. And her name's Joya Irwin. She used to teach yoga in this little co-op housing downstairs in this checkerboard floor, very mellow. But the part I didn't tell you that's in the book is I got a really bad knee injury doing Ashtanga yoga. There's a pose called Marichyasana D where you do lotus and you have to clasp. And I've learned now that, with thicker arms and shorter arms, like I didn't have a high ape index, it's called in rock climbing. Like there's a little test where you can outstretch your arms like on a wall, put your fingertips on a wall, and then compare it to your height. And if your arms are taller than your height, then you have a good ape index. If they're not, you have a smaller index. So obviously binding is going to be harder. So it's a binding pose and lotus. Basically, I was doing it. And the tagline of the book I wrote is yoga is a feeling and not just a shape. And the first part of the book talks about how I didn't know that and how the teachers helped open my eyes to a different way of doing things. And being injured, I'll just tell you, with my knee injury, I didn't think I was going to walk for a little bit, and then I didn't think I was going to practice yoga. And then eventually I started practicing yoga. And then I'm like, okay, I'll be able to do yoga, but I'm never going to do pigeon pose or lotus pose. My knee is too sore. And all that changed eventually. In fact, the cool thing about the way life turned out is I feel like I have superhero powers in the sense that I'm 56 now, and I'm not just talking about yoga. Like I can't believe what I can do now in my body. And the roots do go back to your original question, to things I learned about from these original my original teacher was Joya, but her teachers were Rit Sengupta and Dona Holoman, who kind of came from a fusion of Iyengar and Ashtanga. And look, just let me tell you a little bit about, obviously they had a really beautiful mental practice. It's always hard to just parse yoga out and talk about only the physical, but their spiritual game was strong. But as far as the physical practice goes, what was really cool about them, what I really learned about them is when I did Ashtanga, let's say I was doing a pose, I was a passive participant. Like someone would just grab me, Pattabhi Jois would grab me and like put your chin on your shin, and he would literally grab me by the back of the hair and push my head into my knee, and I'm like, oh, I guess my chin goes on my shin, and
Wow.
or other people just move me around even if it was less aggressive. But instead of moving my body from the outside, what Joya and the times I did work with Rit and Dona would do is they would push on me. And because they would press on me on these certain vectors, I would have to, basically, the shortest way I can say it is adjust myself. I would have to use my own muscular energy to, like the way people would describe this is from the inside out. I would have to create the feeling of stretch and stability that I was looking for in the places I was looking for it, rather than just relying on me being moved around like a third person from a third person perspective. I was really in the first person perspective of, whoa, press into my hand like this. And it changed everything. I won't forget. Now I have the language. Now I understand the biomechanics. But back then in 1999, I didn't know what they were doing. It just felt like magic.
Yeah, I had a similar experience of my first yoga class, and the teacher gave me the most gentle, mindful adjustment. And at a time when I was thinking, remember that very first adjustment in my first yoga class, why is she touching me? And I was in this seated forward bend, Paschimottanasana in the Sanskrit, straight legs bending forward sitting, and my hamstrings were so tight, it just felt like death. And she came along seeing the struggle, and she gave me this adjustment, and it wasn't going down, it was actually pushing back. Like,
yes,
her direction was moving back towards my sitting bones, and it was gentle. It wasn't like trying to force me anywhere. It was just, and now I have the research to understand how the psychological effect of grounding creates a parasympathetic nerve response in the body, and that response allowed like a broadcast of relaxation throughout my whole body, and I dropped another half inch from where I was, and it was just whoa, what was? And it shocked me, like what was that? And
Hmm.
that moment, I was hooked. I was hooked to yoga, like
Yeah.
through that soft touch. It touched me on a physical level, on a psychological level, and to this day, I would even say it almost a spiritual level.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take over the conversation and start interviewing myself, but definitely one question or one thought I had as you were talking. I mean, I really love that experience, and I'm just sad that there's less touch in yoga practices anymore. I really feel that, and I understand, I I I understand trauma and all these things. I respect it. I'm just saying that it is there's something lost in this touch-free yoga era that we live in. And when someone, if that's you and you do find trust with somebody, that I mean, I'm not saying people should just go and touch anybody, but if you can work with somebody that whose touch you trust and they understand these things that you're talking about, that I was talking about, I mean, your question was who are the people that helped you make quantum leaps in your practice, and that's the type of thing I feel like it makes quantum leaps.
Yes.
And it's actually, it's a huge problem because I've, like you, I've been doing this for a long time, and I definitely notice the difference in the quality of the experience of what people are feeling on their mats without that guided touch.
This is something that I've experienced a lot when I teach. A lot of people would come back to class because I touched them, and they would tell me that. And I'm
Yeah.
always like, please touch me. Please touch
Yeah.
me, like respectfully. But
Yeah,
I
of course.
enjoy the closeness because there's it's an intimacy, and it's not a sexual intimacy. It's an intimacy. It's a
Yeah.
closeness, and it
Yep.
feels like I care about you. We're here together. I'm doing this with you. Let me help you. And when there is someone that can, gently adjust you. And I even love those adjustments where it's just the fingertips, like someone puts their fingertip on a spot and then you intuitively say, "Oh, I guess I should change that." And then your body naturally makes an adjustment.
Yeah. And I'm with you on the kindness and the connection, right? I just want to point out that for me, there's that, but it's also a 2-for-1 because on top of that, when it's done well, the touch, um, I believe that also it's educational. So when people do my courses, I tell them, you're not a yoga teacher, you're a somatic movement educator. And so it's this whole idea of give a person a fish and they'll eat for the day, teach them how to fish and they'll eat forever. So if you can, when I don't know your teacher, Peter, but when they put their hands on you and you moved in a certain way and grounded your sit bones in a certain way, and now you have the language. I mean, you didn't really understand what they were doing. It made you go, oh, nervous system how do muscle spindles work? I don't know, whatever research you did on it. But the point is that it's totally different. I mean, the other end of the spectrum was what I was talking about was I don't bend forward. Well, I'm not going to touch you gently so you can ground your sit bones, have this experience. Just grab me by the hair and push me down. I mean, that's the other end of it, unfortunately. And I feel that where we're at now is don't touch anybody. You figure it out on your own. And I'll just give you some words, it's okay. It's just there's a kinesthetic learning that's gone, as well as the kindness that Crystal's talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it may be gone, but I don't think it's permanently gone. And
Yeah.
it's like fashion. Right now we're going through a phase, and the fashion. I said this earlier in a conversation about baggy jeans and skinny jeans. Like
Yeah.
I've got all these skinny jeans because 2 years ago my wife and daughter said your baggy jeans are not cool, Dad. You got to get skinny jeans. So I got all these skinny jeans, and now I'm wearing them. And my daughter won't go out with me, at night and anything because I've got skinny jeans. And I go, what changed? Is it me? No, you need to get baggy jeans. So I think
Well, hang in there. In 2 more years, dad jokes will be back in fashion too.
exactly. But no, like I think touch, we're moving in this rapid speed towards digital, towards even our connection here is two-dimensional in terms of energetic exchange. And I think there's going to be a whiplash where the craving is going to be back towards in-person trainings and and educated touch. And this brings me to another idea that reading your book, we both have a fascination with fascia, with connective
Hmm.
tissue.
Yeah.
And I know from experience that when I still adjust people. In my regular classes, local classes here, I have a group of students that have been with me for some of them for 20 years.
Hmm.
And I don't adjust beginners, the people that show up once or twice and then I never see them again. But if people demonstrate a commitment to come and they start to listen to me or follow what I'm teaching, I just ease into simple adjustments, hands-on adjustments, with permission, of course, and then it gets into an experience where there's parts of a general practice, a 90-minute class, where there's time for me to walk around and adjust, and I do, and the students appreciate it. As an adjuster, what I feel energetically is the second my hands connect with the student in a pose, there's 2 or 3 cycles of breath where I'm just connecting with their connective tissue pulse. And
Hmm.
I'm sure you've felt this because I've read about it in your book a little bit,
Yeah.
where this, it's not blood, it's not circulatory pulse, it's a subtle pulse. And how I feel it is when I cue movement it's always on the exhalation cycle. And the exhalation cycle is when the diaphragm softens and there's this broadcast of parasympathetic juju throughout the body. I feel that in my hands, that current of relaxation. And so I
Yeah.
know that the student is um, responding to the verbal cue and the gravitational force of my hands pressing in a particular place. And the one thing that I teach in my trainings is that adjustment should always first be to help them ground, because
Yeah.
then it's their own body that's creating that parasympathetic nervous response,
Yeah.
that softening, opening. And so that's just rule number one. When you touch people, don't worry about getting them deeper into the pose. Get them free of anxiety. How do you get them free of anxiety? Grounding. And
Yeah.
it's simple.
No, it's great that I love this conversation because it's like always I feel like we're talking about the same things, just different ways of describing it. But when I teach when I teach adjustments, I always tell people the first 3 steps you're not even applying any force. So the first one is intention, which sounds like obvious, but if someone puts their hands on you and go, I'm a 4th series Ashtanga person, you just started yoga, they have a certain way of touching you, versus if you're like, wow, I really love this pose and it feels so good when I do this. I want you to feel the same thing, whatever. So I get people to get clear on their intention. And then you have to assess people to go, what do they actually need to do? I mean, you can't just put your hands on somebody and then go, oh, I don't have a fire plan here. So you got to look back and see what you want to work on. But then the third stage, and this is what you're talking about, I call attunement. And the fastest way I can describe it is I do believe energy is a frequency. And I think that's what you're talking about. So just understand the sine wave of it. And if you're going like this, I don't know if this is going to be a video or audio thing, but I'm just making my hand like rapid in case people can't see. Then like that high vibration is in you. I'm telling people, don't put your hands on anybody.
That's
If
right.
that's you and you're vibrating like that, or the opposite, like flat, like right, like if you're too nervous, don't you're not ready to do any physical adjustment on people. You got to work on that stage, or vice versa. If you're a student, if you put your hands even close to them and they go flatline, or the high vibration, don't apply force. You're not there. You're not even welcome, and you might have to have a conversation with them with your own words and go, "Are you injured? And are you comfortable with me here? Whatever, Of course, you need to ask for permission first. We all know that. But even back to the attunement, it's basically when you have this long, slow waveform with your breath, with even your brain waves, everything. You're talking about the parasympathetic nervous system, whatever. Where this long, slow sine wave in you, and you feel that in your partner, and they're both like 2 guitar strings in harmony. Like when 2 guitar strings aren't in harmony, their amplitudes cancel each other out rather than amplify. And you want to have that. And I'm talking about it from a feeling sense. And so, yeah, you're saying put your hands for 2 or 3 breaths and feel that. And I think that is such an important part of a yoga adjustment. I feel like we need more of that in our culture in general.
That's like bonding with an avatar.
Avatar?
Yeah, like when they do the bond, they have to like find
Yes,
the right
yes,
match.
yes. Oh my God. Yeah, I'm with you. I didn't understand at first. Yeah, 100%. Yes, that's it. Yeah. I mean, that movie is brilliant on so many levels.
So many levels.
Yeah.
So I want to direct this conversation now to your book a little, and I want you to talk about duo, and and
Oh yeah.
and how you came to it. What is it about that? Because I get a sense that in terms of mechanics, that's one of the most important principles of what you teach. Is that
It-
fair to say?
no, I would say if there's anything that I'm trying to offer to both yoga and actually kinesiology in general, movement, it's this concept called duo, and it stands for dynamic unifying opposition. And let's say I'd say the best way to understand it is the opposite, which is uno, which means unidirectional, no opposition. So in really simple ways, I think everybody will know this in a general level, even if you haven't studied the bodies, but muscles have two attachment points, both at the far one, okay, the distal end, and at the proximal end, at the close end to on the bones. And what I have learned in yoga is that there's a literacy gap, is that most people are thinking about endpoint markers of success. Like, can I get my hand on the floor? Can I see the wall in let's say, a revolved triangle? Or can I see the wall behind me in camel pose? Can I reach for my heels in camel pose? That they're guided by that instead of really thinking about applying tension properly on the muscles, that they end up moving okay, I hope this doesn't lose any, it's not complicated, the language, but you end up moving the proximal attachments toward the distal ones. Basically, in terms of a tug of war, you're pushing ropes instead of pulling them. And so what duo is, it's the vector of force. And again, I'm going to just give you give Joya and Orit one small credit back to that previous conversation, is that the way they pressed on me, they didn't have this concept of duo, but they were definitely pressing on me in certain vectors. And as I started to, I have kind of, I love categorizing things, and I start to look at it and go, oh my God, there's actually these different families of poses, then they all have these vectors of force where if you press on it, it actually means that you engage muscles that pull on the muscles you're trying to stretch and create tension. But it means that if you are doing a revolved triangle, that your hand will be further from the floor. Or if you're trying to see camel pose, you might not be able to see it as easily because you're actually applying tension on the muscles in the precise way that you want to. I don't know if that's super clear just from that description, but I'll say one more thing and then I'll see what's landed. And that is, so again, just let me give the definition of duo, and then I'll stop talking and see where you want to jump in. But duo is dynamic unifying opposition. It basically is a vector of force that a yogi presses out on, and when they do, it creates three S's: stretch, stability, and space. Now, space is a tricky one because it had to start with S, but what I mean by space is that the load on your joints is dispersed over several joints and not concentrated on a few. So it gives you space, stability, stretch.
Love that. Yeah, I'm impressed with the way your mind thinks. Like
Yeah.
the way it's obvious in your book that I know you were frustrated maybe by it, but it took you 10 years to write your book. And man, I'm with you there. I know that struggle of, finding time to write, finding the right thoughts, but I hope you have the same experience. It was 10 years for me of thinking about
Yeah.
and writing my book. And in
Yeah.
that 10-year period, so much changed for me. My understanding of yoga changed.
Oh my God.
So that byproduct of that time created a book that I never could have created. And I'm sure you feel the same, maybe. Tell me if you don't. But if I'd have finished that book when I first started thinking about a book, it would have been a sleeper,
Yep.
would have ended up on some dusty shelf somewhere. And now, this ability, and I'm so happy that you finished and that you're on the other side of that too. You must feel it. There's a degree of gratitude for whatever process empowered our voices to write what we wrote. the voice, not necessarily literally, but the inner voice that was guiding the words onto the page.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that. It's a mystery to me how it manifested, but do you find that still kind
I
of
mean,
here?
one person you should talk to is my friend Bernie Clark. He's written many books as well, and I showed him the book when I finished. And he's written many books that are detailed, like the ones we wrote as well. And he was like, "Yeah, this is your PhD," and it's true, you know. And for me, yeah, it was. I actually wrote the book 3 times, like, and I scrapped it twice, and just because the first 2 editions were really good if you're in university studying kinesiology, but that wasn't my goal. In fact, one of my major goals of the book is to educate everyday yoga teachers, or sorry, yoga students, not the teachers. I actually want to make my job as a yoga teacher irrelevant. I'll put on music and say whatever, but I want people to be super educated and make it simple enough that everyday yoga practitioners can understand basic principles. I mean, what I really believe in is the opposite of one size fits all yoga. So you know what precision medicine is? Yeah. So I mean, it's a term that's becoming popular, but I think it'll be even more actually, in the coming years. But basically, let me give you an example. I mean, NCO went through cancer, unfortunately, my wife, and there was somebody in Florida, and basically, which chemotherapy do you get for colon cancer? Well, the national average says that this is the best chemotherapy for this, based on a study of 20,000 people or whatever, however many people they have a study for. Okay, great. So on average, this is a good chemotherapy. That's average medicine. Okay. Precision medicine means what this guy does in Florida. I can't remember his name, unfortunately, in the moment, but he takes your cancer cells and grows the stem cells in petri dishes and literally grows, I don't know the exact number, let's say 8 tumors with your stem cells, and then with your cancer stem cells, and then he will put X, Y, Z, whatever chemotherapy on it and say, doesn't matter what the national average is, for the exact cancer that you have, this chemotherapy is the best. It reduces by 60%. This one only does 40 based on your own tissues. And that's what precision medicine is as an example. And I really feel like yoga has to move into that realm. And if people aren't educated themselves, we're just talking about touching people, all this stuff. Like, I don't know people's history as much as I want to, and all these things. Like, I will never be able to move people around as well as they could if they were educated, and because they know more of their history than I do, and they know more of what they're sensing from the inside out. And that's what I dream of people who can really understand basic forces. And of course, that what do you need to feel in a yoga pose is a lot of things. But one of the places where we start with, back to this idea of duo, is just the mechanical forces of tension and compression, is to really understand that there's so many different variables in your body for why you might not have muscles that are extensible or somebody else flexible or whatever. Where you're at, you might be a tighter guitar string, someone else is looser, and people are giving you cues to tighten your guitar strings for loose people, meaning your myofascia. But that's not you, and you need to know how to modify for that. And that's what I'm aiming for, is to give people I don't know. Let me see if I can show you super quick. Like, I literally have in the book, and I know this might go in audio, but in the book, what I'll show you is there's literally dials. So people have the again, I'll describe it for you in case people can't see it. There's like old school dials, like you would see on a stereo. So Gomukhasana, honestly, truly, I have videos of this where I just store it as a historical record. Look on Google or ChatGPT or whatever people say, why didn't you use AI to how to do Gomukhasana? You're going to see it says, stack the knees, point your toes out this way, do this, do that. And that's a one size fits all cue. And so what people need to know is, like, what am I actually trying to do here? What's your intention? Okay, I want to actually stretch my side hip muscles here, my glute medius and tensor fascia lata, my T-band. Okay, great. So I need to do hip abduction, or adduction. So if I bring my leg in a little bit and I feel the stretch, awesome. Yoga's a feeling, not just a shape. It doesn't mean any old feeling goes. It's a feeling of tension. And so you have that dial where you're like, how much do you bring your knee in? I don't know, that much. Then the muscles that you're stretching want to bring the hip into extension, like the glute muscles. So then to stretch it, you have to bring your hips into flexion. But if you're sitting on the floor, I mean, I don't know if you can see it, then you probably can't see this, but then what the book will show you is that's giving you, and it'll give you the angles. I won't give you it here, but it'll give you this much hip flexion. So that's going to require, you're asking these muscles to have a certain degree of stretch. But if you can't, you have a dial and it says just, if you elevate your hips on a block, that will bring the hips out of hip flexion. And then instead of your joints screaming at you, you get the stretch exactly where you want it. And there's other dials in that pose. I won't keep going through them one by one because that's not really what we're doing it for. But that's the world I dream of, where people are actually educated to know, oh, even if a yoga instructor says this one size fits all cue, and this is the other problem is you get 25 or 40 seconds or 50 seconds as an instructor to hold people in a pose. So you don't have time to explain everything, even if you want to. So you have to use things like stack the knees, but then people can know, oh, I don't have to stack the knees. I can have my knees way out here and I can have my hips here. And you can just precision medicine, precision yoga, your place into it. So you have the perfect amount of stretch for you. And then your nervous system that you mentioned, you can find that parasympathetic tone, you let things melt. And yeah, you have the dials and you have the levers to move your own self, and you're educated.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is that balance. That's the beauty of yoga for me. We find this balance between tension and flexibility, between effort and non-effort, and it's unique to the individual.
Totally.
And how do we give them those tools? Your approach is, like when I looked at your book, I realized that knowledge that you have and your resume of all you've studied is so impressive. And that's what's powerful about your book is you have, for those people that are inclined to want to equip themselves, your book is literally a reference for life.
Oh, thanks so much for saying that.
No, I think about what it took to write my book, and I think about what it took to write your book. And
yeah, writing about movement is the hardest. I will say one thing that I've learned is I feel like I'm giving out medicine that people don't know they need.
right.
Like, unless I can actually work with them and show them these principles, like, okay, you're doing yoga, but you're not doing it with duo. I don't know if I fully described Uno, but you're doing it with Uno and you're doing it one size fits all. If I could just show it to feel it, then you would know it. But until people actually feel that, they're like, oh, I've already studied alignment and all this other stuff, or I don't care about alignment or whatever, right?
Yeah, for sure.
By the way, Ian, this may sound really random left field, but I'm just going to go for it. There's some angles that you have. I don't know if you've been told this before, but I'm getting like this air of Robin Williams.
Yeah.
People have told you that before?
That'll go with the humor, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
Cool. I miss him.
Yeah,
yeah, me too.
Yeah, that's a sad story.
I saw just recently, I don't know what I was looking for on YouTube, but I came across a video of Robin Williams late in his life. And I think he probably already was aware of some of the physical ailments. And he was meeting with Coco, that orangutan, the gorilla that had been taught sign language. So this gorilla that is often used in Hollywood movies, etc., that had some communicative skills. And I've read a lot when I'm doing the research on humor that the human species is one of the, well, in the books that I've read, they said it's the only species on the planet that has humor. But it was clear in this video that Robin Williams and this gorilla were telling each other jokes and laughing. The gorilla was laughing and Robin Williams was laughing. And
this
then
is on video? This is like
it's on YouTube. You just type in Robin Williams and Coco and it'll come up.
Wow.
And there's another video where there's a reporter asking Robin Williams, what was that like? Excuse me. And it was one of the most profound, he said, it was one of the most profound experiences of my life to communicate to a different species in a language that we both understood.
Wow.
to me, that's just such a powerful recognition of the value of humor and the value of lightheartedness, as
Yeah.
healing.
So you're not joking when you said you researched humor?
I did. Yeah.
Wow.
And humor, like intuition, it's never 100%. And when you're, I double down sometimes, like, and I wrote about this in the humor chapter of my book, like, you and I are at that age where dad jokes is a thing, it's just like, well, and I double down on bad humor. The research is in, so I can say this now with authority. Bad humor is almost as good as good humor in terms of opening up these channels of,
Yeah.
of empathy and getting out of your head and things. And when I tell a joke that I think is funny in a yoga class and no one in the room laughs, I give that awkward silence some time to just percolate with everyone, and that maybe people starting to feel, oh my God, I'm so sad for Peter because he told a joke and no one's laughing, that moment. And then I'll double down on that space and I'll say, well, that was an attempt at humor, but I've found over the years that my humor requires a sophistication that most audiences don't have, and so that's usually generates that awkward laughter, and awkward laughter moves into the authentic laughter, and then the cycle is complete. So yeah, no, I feel like humor is one of those things that it gets better with practice, and
Yeah.
intuition is the same, like I've been intuitive most of my life, even as a kid, but as I've gotten older, I've started to put together an understanding of intuition and the prerequisites, let's say, what spaces you have to clear mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually. Those spaces have to be prepared for you to receive this guidance that intuition has, and humor is the same way. I wait
Yeah.
for opportunity in these vacuums, in these spaces, and
So we got gravity and grace. Is intuition and humor coming next?
well, who
Oh,
knows,
part two.
Yeah, who
Yeah.
knows?
It kind of in a way is they're related in that way, I think too.
They're very much so related.
Yeah. What's your definition of intuition?
It
Having studied it so much.
Well, intuition is a very personal thing for everyone. And we've been asking that question, so thank you for asking. Sometimes it's literally a voice that speaks to me. And other times it's more of an inescapable feeling that invites me to lean into something that I wouldn't necessarily lean into. And what I found with intuitive decisions when I decide is there is no right or wrong. Like if I choose something from intuition, it's usually a matter of timing. Like in the short term, that decision may have brought a lot of grief in my life, but long term, over an extended period of time that I wasn't expecting, that decision actually proved to be something extremely valuable for my life. And how I relate to that is, in a Western culture where failure is seems like he's a loser, he failed. But any artist will know that there's 20 paintings in the drawer before you hit that Mona Lisa, And failure is just kind of one of these steps towards creativity, that you have these experiences where, it didn't meet the mark, but it's not about quitting. It's about continuing. And circumstances around you change, and it evolves into something that becomes something masterpiece, frankly. I've had that experience so many times in my life. I trust it now. And I did see in my book, the title Gravity and Grace, and you wrote about it in my preface. Grace is just this non-physical bonding energies, and that to me is intuition as well, that we're connecting to some level of intelligence, whether it's within or above or beyond. It's natural. It's natural for humans to connect to that intuition, that force of intelligence, that it's present, and we just have to make space for it to land.
A space for grace.
A space that could be the next title of the book.
Yeah. It's the name of one of our yoga routines that I have, but it's so true. And actually, I love the word grace too. I love the title of your book. It's amazing. And I just, like I say, I love the word grace in general. And I think you summed it up really well. And That's one of the reasons why I love, of all the ways to say thank you, one of my favorite is gracias, because it
Love
has the
that.
word grace in it, and
Fantastic.
something you're receiving and broadcasting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Crystal, is there anything you want to add
Yeah,
at this
I just
point?
have one more question because I learned that you were a surfer, so I want to know w- like what has surfing taught you that you bring to the table as a yoga teacher and just as a explorer of the body?
Two things pop to mind. The first is a connection to nature. I mean, it's funny because they have now surfing in wave pools in the middle of Dubai, right? It's kind of a different thing, but when it's done well, I mean, which is basically, that's kind of the difference between, well, maybe I don't want to offend the vegans, but definitely a difference between archery and hunting. Like there's a hunt to surfing, there's being out in nature, there's being able to understand. The fact is that I'm talking about, if anyone lost me, I was talking about the difference between wave pools and surfing. But when you're outside in the elements doing real surfing, there's something beautiful about, actually, there's an intuition, there's a grace, there's a harmony that you need with the elements. You really have to, there's a presence that you need. The hard part about surfing isn't the actual surfing, is to end up in the right spot where the waves come. And so there's an intimacy that you need with the ocean, like to such a granular level. I don't think that people who don't surf will understand. You have to know the bottom shape of the ocean. You have to know, where it's shallow, where it's not shallow. You have to understand the currents. There's so many little things that you need to be in tune with. And that's a beautiful skill. And that's part of being in touch with nature. And I think that being on a yoga mat, to me, I told you my original way in to yoga was trying to understand what happens when you're in nature. In a sense, that's the through line, is that my yoga practice does help me to get out of my own way. And then I feel more connected to, even the breath is such an intimate act of bringing, there's a whole chapter in that in the book. Like there's nothing more intimate than receiving the gift of plants and plankton as oxygen that goes down to your toenails. So that's one part of it, is this connection to nature and being intimate with life. I think the second way that yoga and surfing are connected to me is I'm actually seeing things, not where turning myself into a pretzel is the end game. I want to get as flexible as possible, but I actually want to use my yoga practice. Again, I don't want to, I had said this before, but just to make sure people aren't just jumping into this part and not understanding, I love the spiritual part of yoga, but from a physical point of view, I want to be able to surf better now and when I'm 80 from the practice that I'm doing on my yoga mat, and kind of coming full circle of when I was motivated by end point yoga and trying to, or even alignment, to be honest with you, and trying to make shapes and not create the feelings that I was looking for in the yoga practice. Yoga is a feeling, not just a shape. I ended up injured. I ended up actually being worse at my surfing because I was jamming myself, trying to grab my feet in like some back bend, and I just had to get my feet. And I was motivated like that for years. And then I'm just like, oh God, now my back is sore for a week. It'll get better. But I'm like, now I can't surf. And so I'm lucky I had that as a litmus test of like, am I being better at my sports or not? And that actually helped me to really reshape the way I practice yoga now physically. And I guess that's what point I left on the table is I started with a knee injury, and I told you I became superhuman. Like I mentioned that I feel that now at age 56, I am so much more pain-free and fluid and powerful, not just flexible, than when I was 25. Like if I was to get my 25-year-old body back, I would be bummed. I'm like, do not put me back in that broken thing. And that is not what I'm hearing from other people who are 56 years old. They're all like, oh, my shoulder, my knee, my this, my back. I'm just like, dude, read this book, understand what duo is, like learn the neurological skills to fire this through your body, pull things in opposition, balance out the compression and tension in your back. You won't believe how well your body could function if you took the time to educate yourself. So, I mean, we left the idea of surfing behind, but why did it take me 10 years to write the book? It's basically, if you found the fountain of youth in a forest, would you just be like, shh, don't tell anybody? Or would you be like, dude, Peter, Crystal, get your butt in here. Like, you gotta experience this. You'll feel amazing. And that's honestly, truly, I had no social life for 10 years. Like, if it was 10:30 on a Saturday night, I was not having dinner with friends. I was sitting there writing and thinking about things. Like, how can I innovate? How can I change this with this idea? Like, I just basically want to share what I'm feeling in my own self. I want other people to feel this same gift. And I mean, just bringing it back to surfing, that it helps me with my surfing, but it helps me with everything, what I've learned on the way I'm practicing now physically. So first thing was about the connection to nature. Second thing was my yoga helps me to be better at surfing.
This theme of our podcast is about people who took what they learned from the teachers that influenced them and inspired them and moved into their own experience of their inner voice to produce a new way of looking at the same thing. And
Oh, wow.
you have this beautiful intellect, and then you have this nature connection and a physical body that I've watched your videos, and I'm just in awe of what you can do. And I've told you this. You're unique. You're unique in my experience of yoga teachers in the fact that you have a fusion of strong intellect, strong body, and clear insight attached with a sense of humor. So you're the complete package, and I really honor you, Ian, and I'm grateful from the day I met you in Bali at that festival. And there's so many things about an ongoing relationship with you over the years. It's been beautiful, and I'm grateful for that as well.
Amazing. I love that idea, by the way. Just I can tell you're wrapping things up, but I love that idea of acknowledging your teachers and then what did you learn from them? Because that's really what I tried to do in the book. And I think that's really important. I just love to plant a flag on a side conversation there, and I feel that the modern era, that so many newer yoga teachers just feel like, hey, knowledge is all open source. You know, nothing belongs to anything. Yoga doesn't belong to everybody. And I might not be popular saying this, but that's not how science works. Like, you say this person in this research did this in 1976 or whatever, and you quote their research. And I don't know, everyone's different, but for me, that's why in the book I really didn't want to just say, hey, I got to hear and I just came up with this stuff. It was a trajectory. I learned from this person and this. I can't name them all, but these are some of the major ones. And I just wish there was more of that going on in the world, so that people acknowledge the shoulders that of the giants they're standing on. And I really like that you have this in this podcast interview series of like, hey, okay, you got this thing, but you didn't just come up with it. You know, who were the people that helped you see it?
I love that. And I while you were talking about this, the word codependence came up. You know,
Yes.
Codependence is in many ways been what the meaning of that word has implied a certain mental imbalance.
Mm-hmm.
And yet when we really get underneath everything, we are so codependent as a human species. And
Yeah.
you know,
Or interdependent, right?
well, Darwin's theory is starting to get questioned between this cooperative theory. Instead of, you know, the fittest being the strongest, it's maybe the fittest is being the one that can connect strongest. And that to me is, I'm happy, that's not the word. I'm grateful for the lineage of yogis that I came from, you know.
100%.
I can trace these master teachers that I studied with back 3 or 4 generations.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a common thread through this whole lineage: passion and innovation. So it's a lineage that encourages the living art of yoga to evolve. And I feel lucky. I feel lucky that this is the lineage that I stumbled into without knowing what I was stumbling into.
Me too.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, well, thank you again, Ian. Thank you.
Oh my God, I'm stoked.
Yeah, great.
Stoked, yeah.
It's been a really great chat. So nice meeting you.
So nice.
That's it for this episode. Be well and stay open to the teacher within. If you've enjoyed our time together, follow or subscribe and stay tuned for upcoming chats you don't want to miss.